Good evening. My name is Mark Zekulin. I am the president of Canopy Growth Corporation and its subsidiary Tweed, the largest legal producer of cannabis in the world. I'm going to borrow a page from the previous presenter. It's the only question I'll ask. How many people consume alcohol, beer, or wine? Let it be shown it's more people than eat food. So, disruption. I'll tell you about disruption. About 4 years ago to this day, I went home, asked my wife to sit down, and I told her I was going to leave my cushy job, stable job as a lawyer. I was going to team up with some colleagues, and we were going to buy a big old abandoned chocolate factory, 450,000 square foot Hershey chocolate factory, and we were going to grow pot. Anybody who's been married or thought about getting married, that is disruption. And I'll leave that story there. Suffice to say, we did buy the factory. We do grow a lot of pot, and I am still married. And as a good lawyer, for this presentation, I wanted to go back to basics and look at a definition for disruption, a different definition, one that applies to industry. And where I landed came from the Harvard Business Review, and ultimately said there's innovation and there's disruptive innovation. And they define disruption as this behind me: a process whereby a smaller company with fewer resources is able to successfully challenge established incumbent businesses. And there's really two different ways you can go about doing that. You can find an underserved market and use that as your foothold, or you can create something entirely new and use that as your foothold. And what I'm here to talk about is that little company that we started in a chocolate factory, and how it is taking that second approach. We've taken something entirely new, and as we look forward into the future, we are going to take a completely new set of products, a new set of cannabis products that have never been available legally in Canada, and we intend to disrupt that alcohol industry that you guys all fondly support. But before we can understand the present or think about the future, a little bit about the past. About a century ago, give or take, cannabis was criminalized. You cannot produce, you cannot sell, you cannot use cannabis. Perhaps strangely, right around the same time, again, give or take a few years, that experiment called prohibition of alcohol came to an end. Governments decided it was a better idea to educate, to control, to regulate. And I'm not here to talk about the regulation of alcohol, whether it's worked perfectly, all that. But I think it is generally agreed that prohibition brought about some positive change. The criminal element is no longer involved in the booze industry, and while alcohol abuse remains a health risk, a lot of the dangers have been reduced. Meanwhile, of course, the cannabis industry has remained in those shadowy undergrounds. Even though most experts, I think, would readily admit the potential harms of cannabis are much less than the potential harms of alcohol. So, if that's the past, here we are with the future. And why? Because it's 2015. This happened. Why he chose to legalize cannabis, a different topic, not relevant here. Protect the children, win an election, raise revenues, whatever it is. Set of personal beliefs. The key part is that he has decided to legalize cannabis, and this will be a monumental shift in Canada, and I will argue that we'll see it shift across the world, and it already is in certain U.S. states, certain other jurisdictions. A decade ago, cannabis had a support level for legalization of about 30%. Today, it is well over double that. 4 years ago, as a medical marijuana producer, I had to tell people I was in the pharmaceutical sector. Today, I'm wearing my tweed shirt, and you guys gave me a microphone. But as we established earlier on, alcohol is ingrained in our society, and the legalization of cannabis alone won't shift that. Justin Trudeau can change the law, he can change the policy, and he can even start to make inroads by doing that against the known norms surrounding cannabis vis-a-vis alcohol. But it's up to companies like us, like Tweed, to take that and to disrupt the alcohol industry. Which brings me back to that definition I started with. Disruption from an industry perspective. For the first time ever, we're about to witness cannabis take a social position alongside alcohol. A legal alternative to unwind, to let loose for the night, to hang out with friends. But there are challenges to that successful disruption. Rules governing cannabis are going to be much stricter in terms of promotion than they are for alcohol. They won't actually be sold in the same stores, most likely, so the odds of John walking in to buy beer but changing his mind and getting cannabis are much lower. And bars are a staple across Canada. No plans for cannabis bars yet. But we also are not starting from scratch. Polls have shown that over 5 million Canadians consumed cannabis approximately once a month, and another million more will try when it becomes legal. And cannabis actually has some major advantages compared to alcohol. No calories. No hangover. Imagine that for a second. No liver disease. And, perhaps thinking about what your follow-up thought is to that, no need for smoking either. Don't think about this. That probably isn't the path towards disruption. Think about those. Or that's a vape pen for anybody who doesn't recognize it. Or better yet, this. Cultural views on cannabis are shifting, and legalization is upon us. That little company I told you about in the chocolate factory is now worth over $2 billion. We're publicly traded alongside the Royal Bank and alongside Molson Coors, for that matter. Though we are small compared to the incumbents, we've established that it's the small guys who will disrupt. We've established what that disruption is. We've established that there is a path towards that disruption, and I would put to you, it's not a question of if we disrupt. I think it's a question of how much we disrupt and when we do it. Thank you.